Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Panic Restaurant, brought to us by Taito. Now besides having one of the scariest, creepiest, weirdest box arts of all time, Panic Restaurant is a pretty fun action platformer. So here we go with Panic Restaurant for the NES. We have our title screen, Taito, and now you can see copyright 1992, but it wasn't actually released in North America until 1994, and due to that fact, it became a pretty rare overall title. There was also a lot of changes made from the original Japanese version that we'll get into in just a little bit. So here we see our main character, Cookie, the chef, whose restaurant has now just been taken over and cursed by the evil chef Odove. After our villain introduces himself and then flies away, our main character, Cookie, starts to be chased away by evil food. Now there are 6 stages in this game, all of which are named after different parts of a meal. We start off in stage number 1, also known as Appetizer. Now for our overall mechanics for Panic Restaurant, it's your pretty basic platformer on the NES. Our character moves pretty slowly overall. He's pretty big on screen, but the enemies go along with that. There's no problems with any hit detection. There's no problems with the fluent jumping. When you want to jump, you're going to be able to. So it makes for a pretty fun game to play. You're not going to have to be fighting the controls at all while playing the game. Now your basic weapon is a frying pan, as well as you can get other weapons as you go through. If you take a hit with another weapon, you end up reverting back to the frying pan. My favorite weapon, or the overall best weapon in my opinion, is the large spoon that I have currently. Now here's our first boss. As you can see, every time you hit him, he gets angrier. He bounces from back and forth from left to right, and after he bounces back and forth a few times, he'll stop, and you can just wail on him a couple hits with the spoon, and he's done with only a couple hits before he even gets a move off against us. Now by defeating normal enemies throughout the game, you get coins. Now the coins that you do get and collect, you can use in the slot machine at the end of each level. By playing the slot machine, you get different power-ups, extra lives, extra health, and that kind of thing. Now I just wanted to show off the slot machine one time, so every other level I'm going to go ahead and skip that. So now we move past the appetizer, and now we go to stage number 2, also known as soup. Now the game is pretty short. There's only 6 stages to the game like I previously mentioned, but a lot of levels are longer than that first stage. As you saw, that first level went by pretty quickly. The other levels that we'll be dealing with are at least a little bit longer than that. Now in this stage they start to introduce some other elements to the gameplay, including the elevator I just was on. Now one of the more annoying enemies in the game is the pizzas, and not just because they roll at you quickly, it's because of their spawn rate. When they spawn, sometimes it's just when you scroll the screen upwards and they get to wherever they're supposed to spawn from, and then drop on you. So sometimes you may accidentally get one to fall on your head because the screen didn't quite scroll enough, and when you went for a jump, all of a sudden there was a pizza hitting you. Now this is the first of 2 different mini-games that are in the game that can garner you some extra points and such. Now, as you see, you play as a hand that you can move from left to right, and when you press the button, it goes out to grab stuff. You want to try to grab as many fish as possible, and you want to avoid the bomb fish. By grabbing them, you're going to instantly end your bonus game, but you will get any points that you would have gained. Now there is one more of those. It's an egg catching game, which I'll show off later in the run. Now here's definitely our second most annoying enemy that we've seen so far, the exploding apples. They bounce a little bit, and then when you get close to them, they explode in 4 different parts that spread out. Now through some practice, you can get pretty good at getting in between the different peels that shoot off of it, so that it will be able to avoid you. Or you may want, when you're seeing it's exploding, just back away from it for a second, wait for it to pass, and then continue on. However, sometimes moving away from the apple that's about to explode will just end up getting you hit by one of the shards. Also, while going through that whole area, make sure to avoid the lightning that comes down from the chandeliers. Now these pumpkin enemies are pretty easy to deal with. Just be careful when maneuvering around them. They move pretty slowly, even when they do break apart into their smaller forms. Now, that pan up there, as you can see now I'm spinning around crazy, is kind of like the invulnerability, or the invincibility for this game. You spin around wildly, a song plays, and you can take out all enemies in your path for a brief period of time. Now the weapon I just grabbed is the fork item, which basically allows you to bounce on a giant fork, taking out all enemies in your path. It doesn't work as well as like the spoon, and the controls of it are a little weird. Definitely not my recommendation, but I want to show it off a little bit during the run in an area where it really wasn't going to hurt me to use it. I definitely recommend just sticking with the spoon. Now this enemy is a bunch of chickens get inside of a microwave and start bouncing around. Now you can easily hit it a ton of times before it starts spewing out the chickens with that spoon item that you have. So you'll be able to take out the boss before it even starts attacking like the previous one. Now that's where the easy bosses really start to end. Now from here on out, the bosses are at least a little bit more challenging than that one. With stage 2 and our soup complete, we now move on to our salad and stage number 3. Now stage number 3 is actually in the kitchen itself. We'll have to deal with some boiling pots later on in the stage. Now the weapon I just grabbed there is the plate weapon. It allows you to throw plates out, kind of like little discs, out at enemies to take them out. It's a pretty effective weapon. Still not as good as the spoon, but it's definitely better than the fork weapon. And it's something that can hold us over until we can get a hold of that spoon item. Now here's the first time we're going to have to deal with the boiling pots. You have to travel along bubbles along the top of the pot in order to get to the opposite side. If you accidentally miss the bubble, or the bubble pops while you're on it and you fall in, you'll lose a life by instantly losing a life. Now, one of the things about it is, the bubbles don't quite come up all the time, so it may look like you're actually jumping into the pot, but as long as you're jumping onto a bubble, you'll be okay. Now here we use the pot to travel upwards, kind of like the elevator in stage number 2. When we enter this room, watch out for the jumping bratwurst, as well as the toasters that are going to spew out the different pieces of bread or toast out in different directions. If you climb up the upper part here, you can get to one of the other bonus games, and this one is the Take the Egg bonus game. We're going to be catching random eggs. Now in the first minigame we controlled a glove, and this one we'll be controlling a frying pan, and we have to watch out for bombs that are dropped, and we want to catch as many eggs as we can in the frying pan. Kind of a little similar to Kirby's Adventure in the egg catching game, when you're opening Kirby's mouth to catch eggs, and if you catch a bomb, you do lose. Kind of the same concept here. The more eggs you catch, obviously, the more points that you're going to gain as a bonus. Now after the time is up, you get a total of 100 points for every egg that you caught. Now when we come back to the game, we have some conveyor belts that we're going to have to travel across, and some more of those toasters that we had to deal with just before the bonus room. As we continue to the right, after a few more toasters, we have another section where we're going to have to deal with the boiling pots. So take your time while traveling over the bubbles. Make sure that you know the bubble's going to be there before attempting your next jump. Now at the end of this room, we'll have to face off with the boss of stage 3, but right before the boss room, you can see that lollipop up there. You want to make sure you grab that, because it adds an extra bit of health to your total amount of health. So you can see I have from 2 to 3. Now for this boss, stand on the far edge on the left side there, and you can see he wasn't able to hit me when moving back and forth. After he moves a little bit though, he will stop and starts throwing some random shrimp at you. Make sure that you dodge them, and then he'll jump down. Jump down after him, and deliver a few more hits to finish off the boss battle. Now next up is stage number 4, or the fish. Now this stage introduces a few brand new enemies to the game. The most annoying, and one that we'll be seeing a lot, is those flying shish kebabs that come at you. They float for a few seconds, and then they go down or upwards in a